Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Today, for a special evening time show, joining with me is Mr. Classical Theist. We're going to be discussing a touchy topic, the topic of Vatican II, one of the non-constitutional texts called Nostra Aetate, and the question that it beggars, which is, with regard to one of the Abrahamic monotheisms, Judaism, should we refer to these folks as perfidious or elder brothers in the faith? And it's a tough question because the church has literally told us to do both, quite literally. And there's a chronological hard dichotomy between, say, March 21st, 1959. We had John the 23rd saying, don't say perfidious anymore, the way that the Good Friday conversion prayer for our brothers, the Jews, had always scripted it. And so after that, you had popes like John Paul II beginning to refer to them as our elder brothers in the faith. And we moved from a very, very anathematizing, pejorative expression like perfidious, which means like anti-faith, to elder brothers in one and the same faith. So here today to help me sort this out is Classical Theist. How are you, Classical Theist?
Well, how are you doing? Thanks for having me on, by the way. And you're right. This is a very touchy topic, but I also think it's a very salient topic. It's a topic that has increased relevance today, especially in light of current events that are happening in Israel, especially given the way in which, the state of Israel is about to um, really throw a monkey wrench into world affairs. I mean, it has been doing for a long time, but I mean, in a newly emerged way. And so I think that it must require the church to adapt her positioning towards this whole Jewish question. And when I say Jewish question, like that is not a pejorative. That phrase is not a pejorative. I mean, I think Jews themselves recognize the unique status that they have had in world history. They have, sorry, excuse me, let me clear my throat for a second. They are like the way in which this group of, first of all, there are a lot of unique elements, right? First of all, it's an ethno-religion. It is an it is an ethno-nationalistic, it has an ethno-nationalistic ethos about it. The lines between religion and ethnicity are blurred in a unique way,
Yeah.
and they have a perennial presence in world history. I mean, they have been able to survive uh, under what would otherwise be considered by most people like an impossible set of conditions. I mean, you just got to think about how, like, before the state of Israel was created, the modern state of Israel, when was the last time the Jewish people had independent freedom and sovereignty? You'd have to go back. I would think maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like the Maccabean revolt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
That's right.
after that, the Romans come in, and then after the fall of Rome, who inherits the hegemon? It's Christendom. And Christianity is kind of responsible for preventing the revival and the restoration of Jewish independence and sovereignty for like 1500 years, up until 1948 and 1967, and where we are today. And so to say that we're dealing with a Jewish question, a perennial Jewish question, is really an understatement. And I think when you want to unpack what that really means, it really would be conceded by all sides.
Certainly. And it gains a special context from within Roman Catholicism. First off, the question you're talking about can be treated of by secularists because
Yeah.
the Jews, since maybe the Maccabean revolt, have not been autochthonous, which is a brain buster of a spelling word to use at dinner parties. If you're a nerd, they're not autochthonous. They're not tied to the land. That involves a couple THs in there that you're probably not expecting. And this is like this mysterious given answer. Maybe it doesn't cover the explanatory gap, but it's the given answer to the mysterious question, the seemingly apparetic question. Why all the trouble from the Persians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, Romans, through
Well,
Christendom?
church. Yeah.
Yeah, the church. Well, because they're not autochthonous. But the special Catholic question with regard to Judaism is this: what are the evangelists, Matthew and John, and even in a couple of places, Luke, by my count, are they correct? Or is the post-conciliar church correct? And I really wanted to go through, I think you and I I mean, you and I spoke of this 5 years ago, and I'd never really looked into it much, and I was giving normier answers. I think we talked on the phone, but we were either texting so much that I thought we jumped on
Something
the
like
phone.
that. Yeah.
It was before I left California, and I just hadn't thought about it much. It was saying less thoughtful stuff. But when you consider the Gospel of John mentions the term the Jews 70 times, 29 of them are hostile references. The Jews did something pejorative. 11 of these 29 pejorative times happen in the Passion story, the account of the Passion, where it's like the Jews either were the executioners or something like that. One simply has to treat of the question. And for 1,959 years after the birth of Christ, there was a common Christian view, same as we have a common doctor and someone like a Thomas. We have a common view of this mysterious religion we grew out of. Everyone agrees we grew out of them. We share a patrimony.
Yeah.
But they're perfidious, which doesn't just mean without faith. It means they're against the faith.
And
And that
yeah.
when all of a sudden John the 23rd says, no, don't say that anymore. We're going to start saying really nice things. I'd say Nostra Aetate is the most problematic single passage on the Jews in all of the Vatican II magisterium. And I think you agree with me there. I think there are other sort of false dichotomous problems that trads have. Even with this document, I'm like, there aren't problems. Those problems don't stick around. Nostra Aetate on the Jews, the problems tend to stick, and I want to go through them with you tonight, but you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, you say all of a sudden, and I just want to underscore how true that is, because as recently as 1938, you had this draft. So there was this draft of an encyclical under Pius XI that was going to try to deal with, Nazi racism. Um, and it was going to be called Humani Generis Unitas. And a large section of this draft of the encyclical is specifically dedicated to the Jewish question. What is the Catholic approach to the Jewish question? And I have it in front of me. I think it would be wise to go through some of it, because what you see is you don't see so much a textual conflict between this draft and Nostra Aetate, so much as you see in Nostra Aetate a very conspicuous omission of some very important elements to the discussion that are addressed and are acknowledged in this draft. And so what you see is and that's not that long of a span of time.
Yeah.
Uh, we're talking 1938 under Pius XI. It was drafted by three Jesuits, and unfortunately, Pius XI died shortly after this thing was drafted. It's unclear as to whether or not Pius XI even read it. But it would have become a document of the magisterium, I think, because
Mhm.
what you see in this document, and this is very important to acknowledge, you see, I think, a a, a very nuanced synthesis of all of the previous magisterial interventions on this question up and down the ages. And there
Right.
are a lot of them. That's what people don't understand. So like someone like, and I'm not meaning to insult people here, but like Trent Horn, for example, he said in one of his videos that we can look at the church's history with respect to the Jewish question, and we can kind of just hand wave it away because it's just relegated to certain opinions of church doctors and church fathers. But he didn't acknowledge the actual magisterial texts, the magisterial documents, the papal bulls, the litany of papal bulls that touch specifically on this question. And I have a
Right.
list of them. It's actually a very long list. It actually begins with Gregory the Great. Gregory the
Yeah.
Great is the one who inaugurates this Sicut Judaeus non policy. And I don't know if you want to go there yet, but we should articulate what that Sicut Judaeus non policy was from a theological standpoint, and even from a political standpoint, because that, it seems to me, was reaffirmed in this draft, in this 1938 draft, in I think nicer language, but not compromised language. I think the language that this document uses is precisely the kind of approach that a Catholic should be taking today towards this
Mhm.
question. So I think
Do you want to go
hopefully
through
this
like machine
discussion.
gun through some of it? Because I want to go through what that sounds great actually, and I was looking some of that
Yeah.
language up
Well,
right
I
now.
actually think like this document, the 1938 draft, is the answer to Nostra Aetate. So I don't know which one you want to do first. I'm good with either, but we should address those points, I think, so that we can really get a sense of, okay, in light of these magisterial ambiguities in Nostra Aetate, how can a Catholic still respond? How can a Catholic accept what Nostra Aetate says? To a degree, accept what John Paul II says, even though I don't think he magisterialized the term elder brothers. Um, but
He used it so much. He used it.
yeah,
It's
he
like, did
did.
he magisterialize calling Vatican II new Pentecost, new birthday of the church? Not that I've ever been able to see, but he used it so much that it's
We have
it's
to deal with it.
it's you have to deal with it. You have to deal
Yeah.
with it.